Hi everyone, welcome to episode 8 of Last Minute FPL. This is the Gameweek 8 podcast. Good evening, Vikas. Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? Welcome back, everyone. Um, yeah, back after an international week. How are you feeling?
Trying to recollect what happened. Hopefully, in this podcast, we'll get back into the thick of things because I need to make some plans. Lot of decisions to make. I have 2 free transfers as well for the first time this season. So, let's dive into it. Um, we'll start with the previous game week results as usual. And again, as usual, the AI team has done exceptionally well. It's sitting real pretty at 160k in the world now, 72 points. Palmer captain, Saka returning, Madison getting 10 points, Havertz, Wood, Trent. Like, what's not to celebrate?
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredible experiment, and I hope this is giving you the joy in tuning in to see how the AI team's doing. But yeah, I think it's so fascinating, as we always say, that without it's essentially we're playing against a variation of a team without Haaland and competing against that, and it's really nice to see that there are so many different ways to play this season.
Yeah, and I think the last couple of weeks were really good for non-Haaland owners because Haaland owners are not only getting the blanks and the captaincy blanks, but they're also spending a huge chunk of their budget on Haaland. And yeah, let's see how the AI team does because it's in a good position of strength. And the only thing that can probably ruin its season is now Haaland starting to go off again.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to my team, I got 59 points, but a pretty healthy green arrow from 2.3 million to 1.5 million. Quite happy with last game week. Although, yeah, disappointed with Haaland captaincy blank, but in other places, Saka got a huge haul finally. Mbuemo scored, Havertz, Trent getting his bonus as well, and Lewis with that assist, which was kind of a scam, to be honest.
Cheeky point.
Yeah, cheeky boy. And I got that 1 point from Calvert-Lewin over Luis Diaz because I saw the early team news. So, yes.
Do you feel some regret? I think we'll probably go into my team, and it's very similar thoughts. Some regret on not going Saka captain with the Southampton at home fixture.
Uh, I did consider it briefly, but I think like the thing that finally clinched it for me was that Haaland was averaging something ridiculous like 15 or 16 points per game this season, and Saka was getting those one returns. So I'm not. I mean, of course, the result is bad, but I think in that situation it was scary to not go Haaland captain. He had Fulham at home, so it feels like. I mean, if it was the other way around and I had captain Saka, I would have definitely been kicking myself more.
Yeah, and I faced that brunt, like when I captained Palmer just a week or 2 weeks before he went crazy and Haaland scored a hat trick. So I've been there. I think it's always kind of hindsight with some of these decisions and just toss of a coin, I think.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you're comfortable with the decision you make given the data you have at that point of time, I think that you shouldn't regret it too much. And if it's a 50-50, just go with your heart and go with the one that you really want so that you don't have buyer's remorse later. Let's go to your team. Pretty similar score. How did you feel about last week?
I mean, it's okay. I think pretty happy with how Mbuemo, Solanke, Saka did really well, bridging some of those points gap to Palmer, who went absolutely crazy the previous week. So really happy about that aspect. I think Arsenal defense has been a major letdown. I think Saliba and Gabriel both ties up a lot of money, and you're expecting clean sheets from paying that much. Like, forget about attacking returns and not getting anything there. I think has been a disappointment over the last two.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing, right? Like Gabriel goes and gets a goal and clean sheet against Spurs, and then a goal against City, and then against Leicester and Southampton they blank. They're the kind of players you just have to keep in the long term, or just change your structure if you're not comfortable with it.
Yeah, I think this might actually be, for those on a wild card, it might be a good time to actually move out of these expensive defenders and pour all the money into attack.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially with so many premiums doing well and defense being a bit unreliable, that's a very viable strategy. Cool. Let's go into the mini league standings. Not pretty reading for the two of us again. Although our arrows have been green and I think they're trending positively, but we're still 14th and 16th in the league out of 17 people. Paddy joined the league last week, pushing us down a place further. But the AI team is going from strength to strength. It's gone to 5th in the league now and it is representing the podcast in the podium fight.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be hard. Like if you look at top of the table, I think the Joe is probably almost like 100 points clear. So I think that there's already like significant leads being made. Um, and it looks tough, like with this type of a start to the season, it looks tough to make some sort of a significant finish from bottom to top. But I think it's still exciting to see, how things will pan out towards the end and compare against where we are, just for reference for next season.
Yeah, and like it's pretty difficult competition. If you see who's second, it's Conte and Kante. Really difficult to get past such tacticians and midfield powerhouses. Okay, let's refresh our memory a bit and look at the previous game week's matches. I'm guessing you watched the Chelsea game. What comments do you have on any of these games?
I think it turned out kind of similar to what we spoke about. Like New in Forest were a much tougher opposition, sat back much deeper, and I think overall it was a fair result. I don't think Chelsea deserved to win that game for sure. And Forest are playing really well. I think they're if they keep this form, they're a team that's just going to be hard to beat week on week. Similar to Fulham, I think we'll get to Fulham's data as well. I think these two teams have been really, really strong to start off with and difficult teams to play against. So I think it was a very cagey match, 1-1. I really think that, from an FPL perspective, this week versus Liverpool is probably going to be more fruitful for players like Palmer than against Forest.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, this is what we were thinking when we saw Palmer after he came off his ridiculous haul in the previous game week. We said that Forest is not going to be like Brighton, bombing forward. And maybe this is the way to nullify them. Although he did have a great chance to score even in this game. And like, did you see his ridiculous touch on the edge of the box?
That was ridiculous. I mean, he's a ridiculous player. Like in the sense, he does things which are just completely magical. And those are the moments where very few players can pull it off and makes you excited as someone who you own in your FPL team.
Yeah, and I was even seeing some of his videos off the pitch. Like he seems like such an innocent and childish personality. Like he's just so disarming, and it's crazy how good he is on the pitch.
Yeah, I think we'll probably get to this later, but it's interesting to see whether he's someone you should actually target to bring in against some of these more attacking teams that will attack Chelsea, which will leave some space open for him to exploit.
Yeah, and I think if I remember last week when we did the analysis of premiums, he had the highest score against the good teams last year. It was helped by penalties, but you never know. It's something that he could replicate this season too. One of the most boring games of last week was the Villa United game. It ended 0-0, and I think it recorded the least XG in a Premier League game combined over 3 years or something. So yeah, not much to say there.
Do you think the Europa League and the midweek fixtures affected both teams on the quality of that game and the impact you think it'll have moving forward?
Yeah, I think definitely for Villa, especially because they played Bayern midweek, and that's such a challenge. They probably gave their 200-300%. For many of those players, it's like the game of their lifetime. For United, I don't know. I wouldn't say that the Europa League really affected them. Like there was a lot of there's a lack of ideas, no creativity. I don't know. Like there needs to be some pattern to the play, and so I don't think it was just a fatigue thing. I think United did well to nullify Villa, to be honest. I expected Villa to create a lot more chances. But I think the impact of the midweek fixtures remains to be seen. Maybe for the bigger teams in terms of rotation, like you could even see players like Haaland getting rested at some points. But right now, I think, especially coming off an international break, I think all the big players should start.
Hopefully, I think there's also always that little bit of a worry with internationals about when they're going to arrive back at their clubs, and it's one of those weeks where yes, I've always felt very uncertain about it.
Yeah, and especially the South American players. But yeah, I was checking that Luis Diaz did land in time. And Liverpool plays on Sunday, so he's the one player I checked. And like he has 3 full days to train now, so hopefully he plays. And it's a big game, and I think he's in the first 11, so he should play. The other game that I watched was the City Fulham game. Fulham did really well actually, and they kept coming back into the game. Even after City took a 3-1 lead, they set up a few nervous last few minutes. And Haaland was kind of marked out of the game almost. Like all the chances were coming from the wide areas and for the other players. City still dominated, don't get me wrong, but it was a bit concerning to see that they just put 2 defenders on Haaland and it opened up the space for other players. It could be something we see some of the smaller teams employ.
Yeah, I mean, also like Kovacic scoring 2 goals is so surprising. He's one of those players where such a quality player, but getting those goals is so rare. It's like actually lovely to see him score and get those goals essentially. What do you think about Jimenez? He's been playing really well. I think he looked kind of out of touch after his injury, and over the last 4 fixtures, he's gotten 4 returns.
Yeah, he's back to honest work, and spoiler alert, but I have him in my buy list because he has really good fixtures coming up. The next 4 are great on paper, and he's proven in the Premier League, and he looks to be in some sort of form. And like his price is really low, so I think he's a good option depending on your team structure. Is there any other game you want to talk about?
No, I think we can go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that stands out here is that crazy 5-3 scoreline, Brentford Wolves.
Makes you worry about like not owning more City attackers when City go and face Wolves like this week.
Unless you're an AI and you don't think about such things. Okay, let's move on to the team stats for the attacking teams. Tottenham still right up there, but now you see that Chelsea has moved into second place. United see a drop, but yeah, the top 5 are all the teams that you expect to be the big 5 teams. Bournemouth is slowly coming down the pecking order as well. Anything that stands out for you here?
Yeah, I think Tottenham, we always knew they're attacking. I just don't know how much of this, them being the absolute best attack, is influenced by that United game, but I think they racked up a ton of XG. But yeah, like as a manager, Postecoglou always just seemingly wants to just keep attacking, and that's why they have some of these crazy games along with Brighton. That was a bit of a comical game actually, where they couldn't hold on even though they went 2-0 up.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I think still great options in attack. We'll get to them, but Maddison has also been playing really well. Johnson, Solanke, Son may be back, so they're very dangerous team.
Yeah, I mean, even though the United game may have influenced the XG, they're still scoring 2 goals a game, and that's one of the best in the league. So I think and they scored only 3 in the United game. So definitely, and Son coming back in place of Werner will definitely help Solanke as well.
It's good to see teams like Bournemouth, Brentford. I mean, these are players we have, teams we have players in our teams, and it's good to see them like up here amongst the best attacks. Very encouraging. What noticeable inclusion here is West Ham, and I think they had a great result as well, 4-1 if I'm not mistaken. Had a very poor start, but could be a team to watch out for if they are able to turn it around, because they have a very good team as well.
Yeah, I think Bowen is going slightly under the radar. And then one thing that West Ham game showed me is that target whoever's playing Ipswich. It's like that golden fixture is done now for West Ham. So every team will have these 1 or 2 talismans. And when they're going into Ipswich, if you can kind of bring them in somehow, it seems like a gimme. Because in the last 7 game weeks, 5 out of the 7 had the most talismanic attacker getting double-digit returns against them. So that's I think an important thing to keep in mind. And the other thing that stands out to me here is some of the teams that we at the start of the season would have thought will be where Bournemouth and Brentford are, like Villa and Newcastle and Brighton. They're languishing in the mid-table or the bottom half of this table. So that's a bit concerning. But I guess with those mid-price and cheap attacking slots, you just go with whoever is in form. Like Mbuemo came in, so Semenyo, and we got rid of players like Gordon or Isak. So yeah, I think that's something we need to keep adjusting on.
Agree.
Okay, let's go into defense. So here, yeah, I think Villa make an appearance to the top. I think that United game, United, look at United giving Spurs the top spot in attack, Villa the second spot in defense, really helping other teams out. But yeah, interesting to see them up. And City has gone down to fifth. They were neck and neck with Liverpool at the start of the season, but I think in the last couple of games they've conceded a lot of chances.
Yeah, I mean, some of this actually may still be a little bit, I would say, earlyish data. Like, for example, Liverpool have had very easy fixtures. Are they going to maintain it as their fixtures get more difficult? I'm not so sure. But and that's where owning Trent becomes interesting. He's 7 million with the rate at which Liverpool have been keeping clean sheets and how solid they've been. He's still a hold because he's nailed, and he's one of the teams that seemingly is providing us those clean sheet points, even if not attacking. It's going to be interesting to see how that Liverpool Chelsea game is going to be very interesting, because it's going to show how Liverpool are against a top half of the table team. I think they've not played anyone in the top half so far. And at the same time, it's also going to show how Chelsea are going to be against some of the more difficult teams, even though they played City and they got walloped by City in the first week.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like Chelsea's progress, it's like a test for them to see how they evolved from the time they played City. Liverpool did play United, but you're right in calling that not a top half game. But yeah, I think other than that, we should still keep looking at fixture turns. There is a case to be made to sell Trent if you're looking to move that money into attack. It can be a cash cow. Personally, I wouldn't be going there, but like you said, these data are still based on the small sample size and the fixture runs.
What's interesting to see here in this data are the whipping boy teams who are conceding more than two, or expecting to concede more than 2 goals in Wolves, Southampton, Leicester, Ipswich. I think kind of the pattern is setting. You should kind of observe that, maybe specifically target captaincy when someone's playing one of these teams. And kind of showed with Saka playing Southampton.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of lived up to this so far also. Like Arsenal scored 4 against Leicester, Arsenal scored a lot against Southampton. Every team is scoring a lot against Ipswich, and Brentford scored 5 against Wolves the other day, and Haaland's playing Wolves next week. So yeah, you're right. I think that's the most important takeaway from this. I mean, we know that the good teams are going to be good on the top of the table, but this can tell us who to target for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's look at next game week fixtures. We already spoke about some of these games, but what game stands out to you?
I think Spurs West Ham is interesting because again, like the Spurs have a really nice run of home fixtures coming up. So if you're looking, especially from the perspective of moving out like a Luis Diaz, a lot of options on Spurs like Maddison, Johnson. I think they're a very interesting team to target from an FPL perspective, and West Ham seems like a game where there could be goals. I'm pretty hopeful about the Ipswich-Everton game because I do own Calvert-Lewin, and we just spoke about how Ipswich are team to target. So if there's a week or a set of fixtures to target where you expect points from DCL, that is one of those games. So I'm looking forward to see how that plays out, and it's also going to show how good Everton is and whether Calvert-Lewin's a genuine option going forward, because he is teetering on the edge of whether United should own him or move him on.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to keep him. I think the next 4 games are really good from an attacking perspective. I think so far anyway, we had the luxury of benching him. But like this week, Semenyo plays Arsenal, so I'm planning to bench him and play Calvert-Lewin. And I think the next three games are also pretty good on paper for Everton. Um, so yeah, I think little more patience, and we'll hopefully get some reward for it. The other game that I'm interested in is the Bournemouth Arsenal game, mainly because I'm trying to evaluate how tough a fixture Bournemouth away is. Because the transfer that I'm considering this week is Havertz to Solanke, and the Spurs West Ham game is projected to get to see more goals in it from Spurs than Bournemouth Arsenal. Uh, and also there's this new transfer rule, right? Like you can save more than two transfers. Historically, I would have just made the transfer because I have two transfers. So now there is like that, Bournemouth is not such a difficult fixture on paper. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how Bournemouth have progressed because they've definitely stepped it up, both attacking wise and defensively. But yeah, I think defenders and Saka, I think, are definite holds. Havertz to Solanke is a question mark.
What do you think about the United Brentford game? Like Brentford, as we saw in the previous, slide, they're pretty bad defensively in their defensive data, bottom five, I think. United have a fixture turn in the sense that their fixtures are becoming easier in this stretch. How do you think this game is going to play out, and whether there are any good options worth considering them?
Yeah, I think this fixture turn was a lost opportunity for them. It would have been a great time to get rid of Ten Hag and get someone like Tuchel in, but he's gone to England now, and I think I don't know. It's a little disheartening because it doesn't seem like there is a proper way forward. Because yes, they'll get a few results in these good fixtures, I'm guessing, and then they'll go into that cycle again, that loop of false starts, and then like having one bad defeat again. I wouldn't. Again, from an FPL perspective, they're just completely unreliable. Like Bruno is still showing up in a lot of projections and models, but I just wouldn't go there anymore because he's so woefully out of form. And I think whatever the models are using as his prior data, I don't know how relevant that is anymore. Yeah, I mean it's a frustrated fan speaking, but I wouldn't recommend any United players.
Yeah, I mean, I hear those points, and I'm also just a little bit worried that sometimes we wait for players to catch form before getting them in, and then we miss the hauls where we expected them to score depending on like either fixture turn or some other data points that shows that we are expecting them to score some more points. And sometimes we just miss that because you wait too long. And I'm just considering maybe it's just the time to bring Bruno to get some of those points.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, but like since there are so many options in midfield, like I think that I'm okay missing that one for the first haul. Like there's Johnson, there's Son, there's a lot of Spurs players. Nottingham Forest have good fixtures. We still have Mbeumo, he's not going anywhere, and like there's Palmer, Saka, Foden is an option. So I think going to Bruno right now is more out of hope, and like maybe it's like a Hail Mary move where you want to be really different, and I don't see like a huge haul that can really boost your season. Hoping that I'm wrong, definitely, but yeah, that wouldn't be my advice.
I think you've convinced me.
I don't think you needed convincing to not get Bruno. Okay, let's move on to the fixture difficulty. These are the easiest fixtures. Do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah, I think we spoke about some of these, like United really showing up here in the top because of the fixture turn. So I think some of the notable teams which are kind of showing up towards the top: Leicester, Man United, Everton, still strong fixtures. I think we spoke again about Calvert-Lewin. This is the right time to kind of own him, especially if he's my eighth attacker. Semenyo has a difficult run, so it's a really easy way to just play Calvert-Lewin during this run. Ipswich as well, Leicester, they all offer some really valuable options from a budget forward perspective. So teams to consider. I think really if you look at a combination of good fixtures and good attacking data, it's Spurs and Man City. These are the two teams that you have to keep in mind. Liverpool as well have tougher fixtures, but still really good fixtures from a relative perspective, and they're one of the best attacks. So yeah, the teams I'd definitely be targeting amongst the traditional teams that you expect to score a lot of goals, Spurs and Man City, with for the coming fixtures from an attacking perspective. From a defensive perspective, Man City is still the team that shows up really high in terms of data and in terms of like having good fixtures. I think some of the other teams, it's still kind of like a wait and watch, like Man United, Leicester, Everton, some of the teams which have easier fixtures, but they don't have really good defensive data. But if you do want to kind of jump in and hope that some of this data is going to change with the fixture turn, I think these are teams that you can target as well.
Yeah, I think United as a defense, if you can somehow get into that at a 4.5, like we discussed last week, that's not the worst move to make, because anyway, at that price point, you are taking a risk on some of the smaller teams. So I wouldn't, and given the fixture run, like it can enable your attacking players. With City, there is some element of risk involved, but I think it could really pay off. Like the next 2-3 games, if Foden starts to play, he played centrally also last game, and if De Bruyne comes back, both of them have been exceptional in the past, and De Bruyne even this season has been exceptional. It can be a great entry point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's look at the hardest fixtures.
Yeah, I think here the inverse fixture turn, Bournemouth. Spoke about Bournemouth's fixture toughening. So Bournemouth, Arsenal, Chelsea. These are all teams where fixtures are becoming tougher. But since Arsenal and Chelsea specifically highlighted because they do have good data, really good teams. So still players that you don't need to really rush getting them out. But I think if you do have a bunch of Bournemouth players or Brighton players, might be worth considering someone else to play.
Cool, makes sense. Are you planning to get rid of Trent as his fixtures turn, or do you plan to keep him throughout?
I think I'm going to keep Trent because just don't know where else to get those clean sheets from. I don't mind. I'm looking at getting rid of Saliba, so definitely doing some downgrade in defense. So although I wouldn't mind moving Trent out if I had a wild card in my team, I think I have other players that I want to get rid of first, like Saliba.
Makes sense. Cool. Let's look at our position-wise analysis now. Let's start with the forwards. I think I've listed a lot of players as buy. I know you can only have 3 forwards, but I think there's a lot of exciting options. I think Solanke is a no-brainer. Spurs 4 games, they have 3 home games. He's second in the XG data. Spurs looking good, and if Son comes back, I think it'll help him a lot too. And Jimenez we already spoke about. I think he also is a great option, and I have some love for him because he's done well for me in the past. Wood has made a full turnaround for me, starting with avoid from game week 1, but I think he also has 4 great game weeks, and he's been consistently starting and scoring. And finally, I have Watkins as well. He also has a couple of really good game weeks, but it's more of a short-term option.
Yeah, I think very similar thoughts. I didn't include some of these options like Wood and Raul, but that's also why I don't have anyone in my avoid or sell category, because I think a lot of the forwards this week, very good options. Like if you look at Ipswich's forward or Vardy, we have Leicester, TCL, Wood, Jimenez. I think all good options. So I think really good time to have 3 forwards at this point in time.
Yeah, and in keep I have Havertz and Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin, like I said, I think this is where the fixtures get simpler for Everton, and if it's now or never for him. Havertz, I would still probably lean towards doing Havertz to Solanke, but it's not the end of the world to have him playing against Bournemouth. Yeah, that's my thought process for keep. Interesting
player that does show up in the statistics here when you look at forward. All players you've spoken about, if you look at the end, is Cunha. I think he's a very exciting player. No, maybe not for this week, but week after, Wolves' fixtures really start to brighten up as well. And He's a player that it's definitely in my watch list 1 week from now.
Yeah, and he's another one of those cheap forwards, and I think a lot of Wolves fan rate him very highly as well. And I think one thing that I've realized is these Palace players who we keep talking about, who do well in the data and like who are not getting any returns. I would just sell Mateta if you still have him. He's not playing 90 minutes. He's getting the odd benching, and even when he does play, he's not getting the returns. So I have Isak and Mateta and sell. The AI doesn't agree though. It's rated Mateta literally fourth. But interesting that it's put Jimenez third, and that's pretty impressive to see that he's risen so much in such a quick time.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of him doing well and also Fulham playing really well, and the AI projections clearly seeing something in the data that's really pushing him up.
And what are your thoughts about Jackson now that I mean he's pretty much started every game. He's high in the AI projections. He's high in the statistics. Do you see that now will be the time for Nkunku to play some games, or will he continue to get the 70 minutes?
It's very hard to say. I think at the moment he probably continues to start because he's done well. Like in the games he's played, he misses chances. It's the same Jackson, but improved over last season. But he still misses chances and so on. Nkunku has a blistering start, although against much easier opposition. So I think it's a case of if Jackson has a 2 to 3 game dry spell, then he could easily get benched. So I think the way I think about Jackson is good player to own as long as things are going well, but he can easily just get benched with a small dry patch.
Yeah, and I think he's basically competing with players like Solanke and Havertz, who you know are going to play 90 minutes. And probably that X minutes is the only disadvantage that he has. Okay, let's look at midfielders now. Cole Palmer right up there in both statistics, in AI projections, but not in our buy recommendations. I think that's why we're not doing well.
I think so. Something here about not following the AI.
Yeah. But yeah, in buy, I think similar thought process to you. Like I've gone with Spurs midfielder Brennan Johnson. I really like him. I think I'm convinced that he's nailed down a spot now. Mbuemo, if you still don't own him, has a great run coming up. And McNeil, like we said, Everton's attacking fixtures, and he's probably more of an assist threat, but I think he's been more reliable than Calvert-Lewin so far this season, so he can be a good option.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn between Maddison and Johnson. I think Maddison's stats are just a little bit better overall, like from an assist perspective, especially. So I think that's why I picked Maddison as someone to target specifically. But I have Johnson my keep. If you own him, no reason to switch around. I think, like I said, he's in the form of his life. One player I am targeting, actually, maybe even higher than Maddison and Johnson, is Foden. I think it's again coming back to the discussion we had over Bruno. I'm looking for who's that player that can get me points that others are not going to own.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I'm looking at Foden very strongly.
Yeah, I think I would be more supportive of your Foden move for sure. Like I said, he played centrally last week. He's been looking good. I just hope that Pep unshackles the team a bit. Because ever since Rodri has been injured, they've been controlling the game a lot. They've not really been going gung-ho at the other teams. But Foden could really make use of, what happened in the previous game where Haaland was double marked and all the chances were coming to players around him. Someone like Foden can really thrive from that. And the next 4 games are amazing on paper. Like City could easily rack up the goals. So I think he's a prime candidate for your Coutinho type pick where, no one has him and then everyone scrambles to get him.
Yeah. In my cell, I have Diaz. I think Diaz is... See how fast it's changed, right, with Diaz. But I think if he starts, he could smash it against Chelsea. Like, I think that game could be very open depending on... Like, Chelsea are open. They attack like maniacs in the sense that they still don't have that defensive stability. So they focus all their energy in attacking. Liverpool, So Liverpool can exploit that. Diaz can score a lot of points, I think, this week, but that's if he starts. Now I think there's that doubt that's been thrown in with Gakpo playing well, and is Diaz going to start, not going to start? You have options like even Madison, where he has that little more certainty. That's where I think I'm strongly leaning towards moving on so that I don't have to deal with that benching headache.
Yeah, I think like it's weird, right? Like with these Liverpool players, like first everyone was like Jota's the one who's nailed, then it became Diaz, now it's Jota again, um, out of the two midfield options. But I would be tempted to keep him. Like I said, he reached England already, and he has 3 full days to play, and I still think he's in the first choice team. And I think he had his benching. I don't want to keep him long term either. He's probably going to leave my team next week when they play Arsenal away. I was also considering Diaz to a Spurs midfielder, but just like you said, Chelsea is not the most reliable defense. Sanchez has also been up and down. He's had some moments of like really making bad mistakes. And Diaz is someone who thrives when there's space. Like he did so well against United, and he has actually been in the form of his life as well. So yeah, I would keep him for one more week. Because again, with Spurs, the goals could easily get spread around, and I don't want to time my move wrong. I would feel more comfortable selling him when he's playing Arsenal away.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I spoke about all the certainty of minutes and stuff, but the player I'm actually considering moving Diaz to is Foden. So I really can't use that excuse of X minutes really, but it's just more of do I think Foden is going to do better over the next 3 to 4 versus Diaz? That's what I'm going for.
No, I think that's a great upside move though, because Diaz is playing Chelsea, and even if they're open, it's still a decent team, right? Whereas Foden is playing Wolves, who we listed as one of the target teams. So that could definitely see a big upside. Yeah, and in avoid, I've kept Saka because he's seen a lot of transfers in after a 16-pointer. So if you don't already own him, I don't think this is the time to go for him. He's playing Bournemouth now, but the fixtures do take a turn. But yeah, even though I've listed so many players in buy, I have no one in sell. So I won't be making a midfield transfer this week, basically.
I just know this Diaz sell thing it's just gonna bite me back so badly when he scores a double-digit haul this weekend.
I don't think it can be as bad as Palmer or like our Palmer or Salah sell recommendations. Okay, let's move on to defenders, and I think this is a pretty important thing to discuss this week. And it's kind of sad that it's happening right after an international break when like we've been a little out of touch with the game, because a lot of decisions to be made in defense. Fixtures are turning for Arsenal, fixtures are turning for Liverpool, and the structure of the defense itself is kind of called into question. How many premiums do you own? Do you go really cheap in defense? Do you like have set and forgets from the big teams, or is that not making sense anymore? What are your biggest dilemmas?
I think I've put Saliba and myself in defense. I want to move away from double Arsenal defense. Even if they get a clean sheet now, I think I just want to move more funds into the attack. So I do want to get rid of Saliba as soon as feasible. Whether it's this week or next week, I haven't made up my mind. But I'm not as certain about Gabriel and Trent, because they do have that attacking potential, and it's also a question of I don't know who else to get. Like their defense has not been a very reliable set of players that I can target yet. But again, I think something to watch. Like for example, we spoke about United defense. If there's a 4.5 option that presents itself with United, like Martinez, if he's starting regularly and I'm a little bit more sure, then these are players that I'll maybe even look to move Trent on, for example, to really put in more funds on attack. But those are more a wait and see for me.
Yeah, I think like similar thoughts about the team structure in defense for me, but yeah, one thing I told myself when I sold Gabriel was, with these players, you just got to keep them for as long as possible to reap the rewards. because you can't predict when they'll keep the clean sheets, when they'll get the goals. But I understand making the move to change the structure. So I wouldn't move between the premiums, but I agree with you. Trent and Gabriel are locks in my team for now. Saliba, the only reason I would move him out before Bournemouth is if you're like enabling your Foden move, for example. I think that makes sense. I've also listed Guardiola in keep for the same reason. Just he's starting regularly and now he's also playing more attacking. I think it's safe to just keep those two big hitters because in attack we are seeing a lot of flux. We are making a lot of moves, but these defenders are going to play. Like for example, 2 weeks ago, our opinion on Diaz was, how can you not own him? Like he was like the scariest guy to not own. So those opinions change more frequently than I feel the defenders. So it helps to have maybe two defenders who are just going to be there and you can focus your transfers elsewhere.
But having said that, like if it's really not paying out, the two players that can show up in this table and players to keep an eye out on, Milenkovic. I think he's showing up and attacking there. We spoke about how Forest have really good defensive data. So he's a good target, like to move and get some money out of defense. And Aitnuri again showing up really high. Bulls fixtures are going to get much better. These players could be potential options to just like rotate around and they're like C versions of Trent.
Yeah.
You hope for some attacking returns and clean sheets, but at a much lower frequency.
Yeah, I think with Aitnuri, the sad thing is he plays for Wolves. Otherwise, he's actually been extremely threatening in attack. Like it's almost a no-brainer to own him if he played even for a half decent defense. But I've gone for a different Forest player in my recommendation. I've gone with Aina instead of Milenkovic. He's also 4.5 and Forest have great fixtures. Van de Ven and Porro from Spurs because of the fixture turn. Maybe I wouldn't spend so much money on Porro, but I do feel like he'll get an attacking return or two in the next few games. They have Ipswich at home coming up. They have West Ham at home coming up. So that's the reason I've gone for them.
Yeah, but that's a fair point. I think we both have Van de Ven. We spoke about him last week as well. It's a very exciting player to own, and he comes at that 4.5, 4.6, which also makes him more alluring.
Yeah. And Konate and Justin have kept in avoid, seeing a lot of transfers in for them. But
it's just an injury waiting to happen. Right? That's the main thing, which is it's like stopping me from going there.
And also, like if you're anyway going Konate, you're losing out on that attacking threat of Trent. Liverpool's fixtures are turning anyway, so like you don't have that insurance of they're going to create a lot of attacking chances anyway. So I would just go really cheap or stay with Trent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's look at the keepers now. Yeah, so not much to say here. Allison is injured, so that's a bummer for Trent also, to be honest. But other than that, I am not suggesting any keeper transfers to make unless you're on a wildcard.
Yeah, I mean, I miss Rhea really badly. I feel like, I just really do not like what Arteta does with his like press conference and like hiding things. So it's so unnecessary, but yeah, I really miss Rhea, owning Rhea. It felt really like one position to not think about at all. Now I have Flecken. He's Mr. Consistent 2-pointer. I'm just thinking about, how long to play with 10 players, essentially one man down every week. And Pickford is in my radar. It's 4.8, not much difference in price now, I guess, to Flecken. And Everton's fixtures that we spoke about, really, really strong. And it might be like kind of like that turnaround point which happened to Pickford last season. So he's a player that I am considering in my buy list. Maybe I won't get him this week, but he's in my radar.
Yeah, I think this season, if you've accumulated like 2 or 3 free transfers at some point, it may be a move that you can make. Like if your team looks decent, it can be a luxury move. Who would you recommend on wildcard at this point? Is it Pickford only?
I think Rhea. I would still go Rhea. And for his wildcard, I might go with Rhea and just get rid of Arsenal defense completely and maybe just play Trent and like a bunch of different 4-5s. So maybe some sort of a structure like that. But yeah, if not for Rhea, I would go Pickford. Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably go Rhea or Cells. I still can't have the trust in Everton defense. Like there's so much trauma there. Uh, yeah, I think that's probably why I'd go Cells. I know he's yellow flagged. I'd keep an eye on that. But I think Forest have good games coming up, so that would be my pick. Okay, let's look at our teams for next week before we wrap this up. We'll start with the AI team. Pretty ballsy move. It's going Palmer captain against Liverpool away. That must look nice as a Chelsea fan.
Oh man, I mean, this is going to be exciting to see what happens. I'm looking forward to that game. I think this is probably one of the games I'm looking forward to most so far this season, because I think both teams are like, they seem very attacking. Like both teams seem very attacking, and it could be a lot of goals, which bodes well for the AI team. So very, very curious to see how this turns out.
And the team definitely has some transfers to make. I think it was Robertson out to a City defender, if I wasn't wrong, because City's fixtures are really good, but I don't think it has the space to go for someone in defense. And I think Luis Diaz is also someone who could make way depending on his X-Mens towards the end of the game week. But given that he's back, I think he may stay. But I think the rest of the attack looks really good. Wood, Watkins, Havertz, Maddison, Saka all have good fixtures on paper. And it even has Rodgers on the bench in case someone gets rotated.
Yeah, I mean, with the no Haaland thing, always it feels like the AI team looks so much more balanced. Like good players all around, really. And maybe except for the keeper, but like 10 really strong players. Yeah, interesting to see. I feel like the biggest differences are coming from captaincy, especially because like a lot of people don't even own Palmer, and if Palmer scores like 15 points, then the A teams are really going to jump ahead. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of variance, and it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to my team. I think I'm mostly settled. I'm pretty certain I'll be doing Havertz to Solanke. I was in two minds about it. I was thinking I'll save and go with 3 free transfers into next week because there's a big fixture turn, and I thought I'll weigh my decisions out there. But Solanke is projected to score, I think, significantly more points than Havertz this week. Maybe it's Bournemouth getting better defensively. I don't know. But even in the odds data as well as model data, Solanke is much better projected. But I think the rest of the team I'll keep the same. I'm hoping Diaz comes good against Chelsea with a more open game. Otherwise, that was the other move that I'm considering, Diaz to a Spurs midfielder. But I'll leave that to one more week and see if there's a better option. It was actually a move I considered last week as well, because last minute I found out that Diaz was benched, and I considered doing Diaz to Johnson, but with just 2 minutes of thought, I didn't want to jump into something, and then, like going into the international break, I thought it's better to keep 2 transfers.
What do you think about what would you do if Saka is confirmed to be out, or if there are like huge doubts on Saka starting? I think that the second scenario is more likely. What's your plan of action there?
Yeah, it's very unlikely Arteta will come out and say anything positive about Saka playing. But if it becomes if it stays the same way, I'm not going to do anything. I think he'll play. But if it's obvious that he's out, I'm also considering Foden. I think he can be a placeholder for Palmer later. I think Palmer is the player I really want to go to if I move Saka out. But with Liverpool away this week, I'm not as strong as the AI. I think with Foden's good fixture, it'll be a good opportunity to go. I mean, it's like a free hit if Saka's out. I think it's worth that risk.
Are you gonna get tempted by things like he's not pictured in team travel and then the hotel?
Not anymore. Like, remember the Raya thing? Like, he wasn't pictured anywhere, and then like 15 minutes before deadline, he was walking out of the hotel, and even then, like, people were like, oh, but he's limping, and it looks like he still has some injury, and then he just started like it was nothing. So I don't I wouldn't like. He's not gonna be in any of the pictures. I can tell you that now. Like that's what Arteta does. Like he's not gonna be in any of the training pictures, even if he attends the full training.
So you're going to keep Saka unless Arteta explicitly says he's up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll see what like there'll be leaks. I'll see what people are saying. Like it's there'll be some of the ITK accounts who may say something. If someone reliable says that he's not gonna play, I'll move him on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a smart thing to do. I mean, I fell for it with Raya and I really miss it. So
Yeah, I mean, you can't help Arteta's mind games. I don't even know who he's playing the mind games with. It was a game against Leicester. So, okay, let's move on to your team.
yeah, I'll probably make some transfers. What I'm considering at the moment, I have 250 transfers as well, is Saliba and Luis Diaz out to Foden and Rico Lewis or Van de Ven. I think that's what I'm considering at the moment. I don't know about Rico Lewis and Van de Ven. I feel like there's plus and minus to both. Rico Lewis is definitely the higher ceiling, more exciting pick. Van de Ven maybe a little bit safer. So I still haven't made up my mind there, but I'm very close to being sure about getting Diaz, Foden for Diaz.
Do you need to make the Saliba move if you need to afford Foden?
Yes, I need to move that.
Okay.
So that's why I was talking about kind of moving some funds out. And the way I'm thinking about this is also just generally changing the team structure, because eventually I think I'd move Foden to Palmer, so I can have Palmer, Saka, and Haaland.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to go Foden to Palmer than like Diaz to Palmer. So
Yeah.
that's the process there.
Yeah, I think you can definitely get rid of one premium. I don't know if it's this week or later, but I think the long-term strategy, like you do have more money tied up in defense because of Saliba and Gabriel and Trent. So yeah, and I think like going into somewhere around game week 12, game week 13, I think the template will be something like Haaland, Saka, Palmer. Maybe even no Haaland at that time, but Saka, Palmer have like a really good run of fixtures then. So
Yeah, that's exactly my thought process there. And I do also think there's a big chance that backfires because Diaz can double-digit haul against Chelsea. But I think I'm still going to target the ceiling, expected ceiling.
yeah,
Foden.
this is where you go with your heart. Like if your heart tells you to go for Foden, just go for it. Also, as a Chelsea fan, why like it's probably better to hope for Diaz not to do well.
Correct. Yeah.
And have the double heartbreak if it turns out bad.
And captaincy, I think Haaland is what you're targeting.
Yeah, I mean Wolves, like it's one more decision. I don't want to spend too much time even thinking about it. Like the only other realistic option is Saka, and like he's yellow flagged. Like why even risk it?
Yeah.
Or what about the Ipswich targeting thing? Calvert-Lewin captain.
Calvert-Lewin captain, don't tempt me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think getting Foden itself is a differential enough for you. Like, there's no reason to put the armband on him.
Agree. Yeah, I think it's just Haaland because for multitude of reasons we spoke about Wolves and Haaland just Haaland. I think.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. That brings us to the end of this week's episode. Hope you had fun listening to it. Any last words, Vikas?
Yeah, best of luck. I'm really hoping that this 1 week where we can take back and look at the AI team and say that, hey, like what a blunder. But, let's see how it goes.
I mean, it did. There were a couple of weeks where it fell. Like this is that season, right? Like you have those super extreme highs and super extreme lows, but somehow it's ended up on 160k. So I think what we need to do is just take the bad weeks on the chin, because maybe that one, like Foden hauling could be that 1 week around the corner that really shoots up the rank. But yeah, if you've watched this episode till here, do like and share and subscribe to us.